Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, MMR.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the show. Hope you come back often and tell your friends to also join us. Before we start the show, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for the show's prayer. Father Walters, welcome.
Almighty God, just as our models imitate the beauty of your creation, may we imitate your kindness and generosity to us in our relationship with others. Bless us now and always. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father. We really do appreciate everything that you do for our show.
You're welcome.
Now, I want to turn to the sponsor for our show, which is Brennan's Model Railroading. So if we could run the video, please, sir.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
We really appreciate Dennis's sponsorship of our show. Thank you so much, Dennis. I now want to introduce Bob Davidson, who is the chairman of our scholarship program. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Let me say, it's hot in Syracuse when I'm not wearing a hat. It's 90 degrees today. Anyway, welcome to June, and we're just 3.5 weeks away from the deadline for applications for the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship. So I'm kind of here for a couple things. One is to make a last effort. Please, I know that there are some shows going on. We are still actively marketing. We'll be in Harrisburg this coming weekend. Thank you, Greg and Steve and Martin. We're at other shows, throughout the summer. One of the things we're finding is our biggest challenge has been getting the word out to prospective applicants. So please, if there's any way you can help us, if you have a club meeting coming up in the next week or so, if you just know of someone who has a son or a daughter who is either a senior in high school or attending college and plans on pursuing a STEAM program, and they're into model railroading, the application is not that daunting. It would just take a day or so to fill out, and we do have enough applicants to fulfill our goal of awarding 3 scholarships, but we're always looking for more. So if there's anything that anyone can do, even if it's just getting a poster up at your local hobby shop, again, you can always email me. I'll put it in the chat, and I'll jump over to YouTube and put it up there as well. Just let me know. I'll send you a file. You can print out a couple of posters and put them up at the stores and stuff. Just so you know, again, we're actively planning for the future. I'm happy to report we just had a meeting this week. We're now listed on scholarships.com, which is the #1 rated scholarship search engine. And we have several other applications out to be on hopefully all of the top 10 search engines for scholarships across the country. So, and that's one thing that's important about the New Track Scholarship is that we are not restricted by region or city or program or group. This is open to any modelers, any young modelers in any scale, anywhere across the United States. So I know you'll be hearing more in a little bit about other programs out there, and there are, but we're kind of unique in that we're funded by modelers directly and that our program really goes coast to coast. So please, if there's any way you can help get the word out, we'd appreciate it. Obviously, your contributions of good wishes and good finances are always welcome. So we'll keep the faith and hope you will too, and we'll be around for quite some time. So, but please, if you can, if you know of anyone, we would hate to have some qualified modeler, miss the boat because they didn't hear about this program. That would really be a shame. So back to you, Jim.
Bob, I want to thank you and the committee members for the great job that you're doing. I really do appreciate it. And it's obvious that the program is finding some great traction, and I'm very happy about that. If you remember way back, seems like way back, it was about 2 years ago, we were the first group that really went public congratulating Walters on starting their scholarship. And I still have to take my hat off to them for raising this issue and being the first organization, the first model railroad organization out there that offered scholarships, $2,500 scholarships for young model railroaders. And I've got to take my hat off to Walters Corporation for the forethought that got them to that point. And we really do support what they're doing. I'm also very pleased about the Rockville Model Railroad Club that Greg Cassidy belongs to. And I think they were the first club that I know of after Walters that came along and decided that they'd like to do something too. So what I'd like to do now is introduce you to James Anderson, who is the chairman of the Rockville Model Railroad Society's scholarship program. And they just had a very successful award of their scholarship to a young modeler. And maybe Jim can share that with us. So James, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. And I think I spoke to your group a while back about our program, and we really just appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk to folks on where we are. And I agree with Bob. It's really hard to give away money. So, we've made a concerted effort with that. Just a little bit of history. We've done this over the course of the last 3 years. When we launched the program, we were targeting students in our county of Montgomery County, Maryland, specifically, and we did receive a qualified applicant, and we were successful. But the last 2 years, we've expanded eligibility for our scholarship to across the state of Maryland. And this year, we were very fortunate to get 5 highly qualified applicants, and all of whom have had extensive experience with model railroading throughout. They're becoming young adults, really. And this year, our recipient his name was Alex from Harford County, which is right on the Delaware line. He submitted an excellent application. You can see a little bit of his layout in the background there, but it was a very impressive layout. And he talked about his skills and how he's evolved into the hobby. And that was just really terrific. But our approach with getting applicants was we contacted every county in the state of Maryland. I think there's like 29 counties or something like that. And we contacted their school administrators, and they distributed to our flyer and application to every high school counselor for in the state of Maryland. And that was very beneficial because each high school has a book that they distribute to their students. And in our case, we were able to, our 5 applicants were from across the state, all the way from the western part of the state in Garrett County, which is, just on the West Virginia border, all the way down to the southern shores in Baltimore. And so we were very pleased with that. And we felt that targeted strategy was again very helpful. I will say that we did select someone, and we did have to send letters to those who were not selected. But in our letters, we referred them to the New Tracks Scholarship with the idea that they could still have time to apply. So we really appreciate the partnership there. We were fortunate enough in the state of Maryland, like other states, each high school has an awards ceremony. So we actually presented the scholarship at the awards ceremony at the high school, and which was very well attended. It was a good opportunity to promote the hobby, but also just again build goodwill through the community. So we were very pleased with our result. That's the certificate that Alexander received. He will be attending the University of Maryland, moving into the field of biology, but we're in the STEAM, so that's a science. So again, just we all really felt good about the effort, and frankly, it's drawn the club closer together because we really believe we have a true focus and are giving back to the hobby. So we're pleased with it. But I think this has been a great partnership between our group and New Tracks too, because I know you've been promoting our efforts, and we're trying to do the same on our end as well. And I would offer Greg. Greg has been very involved as well, and if you wanted to offer anything.
Well, I think you've covered most of it, Jim, and these people are really tired of seeing my face.
Sure. I mean, a couple of things that I think have been very beneficial for us this year too is we have a QR code where people can just simply flash their iPhone onto the QR code, and it brings them to the application. That has been really beneficial. Greg was instrumental with that, and we streamlined the application process as well, which has made it a lot easier. And now we also accept donations, just like New Tracks does. And we get a lot of collections from people in the state of Maryland and in the DMV who are pleased that any proceeds for that is going towards a good cause. So again, I think this has been a real success for our club, and has really kind of re-engineered the purpose to a certain extent, which we're very pleased with.
Well, James, I appreciate so much you being here this evening and bringing us up to date on your program. And please, we'll have you back again, because we do appreciate so much the partnership, and wish you all the success in the world.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jim, and your support just means a lot to the group, and I think we can all be proud of something of something really good that we're doing. So,
thank you so very much. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Well, now I want to turn to Martin. Yes, sir. Well, now I want to turn to Martin Brechbiel, who is the great newsletter editor for New Tracks. And I'll tell you, Martin, the last issue, the June issue, you've just outdone yourself. It's a beautiful issue.
Oh, great, Jim. Thanks. I have no idea how I'll follow that up now, of course. You hit a high note. There are limits. But the real thing that, what really helped an awful lot was we had a nice layout article in that issue from Pat Rivard, who graciously sent a full set of photos and a nice article. So we were able to have a feature layout. So the question tonight is then, well, which one of you is next? And next is now. So, it doesn't have to be 20 photos, but, 4 or 5 and a little bit of a write-up about your layout. And that'll be the July issue. You'll be in there. So, just send them to me and we'll get it going. So we could do this every month if everybody would participate and just send, a handful of photos and a little bit of a write-up about what your layout's about. What's in each photo? We're good. So I'll leave that challenge on your doorstep, and hopefully somebody will pick it up and run with it. Back to you, Jim.
Well, Martin, thanks so much again for everything that you do for the newsletter. You've done just a fabulous job in a very short period of time, getting a newsletter to really be a first-class publication, in my opinion. And we do hope that the viewers are interested in it and want to participate in it and want other people to see what their model railroads look like. So it doesn't have to be the greatest 20 pages or 50-page article about your model railroad. For, like Martin says, 4 or 5 photographs and a couple of paragraphs, and that's what we'll feature. But we hope that you'll participate because it's your publication, and if you want it to be successful, then that means that you're going to have to be involved in providing the information that Martin can include in the publication. Because he can do the editing of it and make sure that it looks nice and all, the content is up to you, the viewer. So we're counting on you to want to do it, and we're suggesting layouts. At least one issue be featured. So let us have your layout photos. Well, now let's turn to Chris Course and Greg Cassidy again to talk about the upcoming My Build segment on June the 19th. Chris, Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Finally back. Been a heck of a Shriners convention, as Greg put it. All right, let's see here. Where is the? Come on, there we go. All right, the next My Build is June 19th. That is the challenge is water. So whatever you can do along those lines, waterfront buildings, wharves, boats, covered bridges, water tanks, anything water related, boats, please send them to me via email, railrunner130@hotmail.com. And if you can get them to me by June 16th, that'll give me time to get them properly in order and all that fun stuff. Another thing we've been talking about is what we'd like to do is possibly mix up the challenges a little bit. On the New Tracks Facebook page, we have a survey right now asking about topics. So what we want to do is maybe reduce the number of challenges to 4, and once we get a good pool of topics, we're going to have people vote on them. Because I know, I think it was Jack put in there that he recommended maybe around Veterans Day, possibly doing something veterans related, which is a good idea. Not quite sure how we would do that, but I know to me that seems very limiting. But we could do something along those lines. But anyway, please go to the Facebook page and vote, or actually not vote, but throw in some suggestions. Once we get a bunch of suggestions in, we're going to go ahead and put it to a vote and see what we can do to mix up the challenges. So let me turn it over to Greg. Do you have anything, Greg?
No, I don't think so. I mentioned the Facebook page and where people could go to throw in more suggestions for themes last week, but I forgot to show the slide that I had made showing it.
Oh, you want to?
But I hope people are regularly visiting the NewTracks Facebook page because it has more information than the show does, and it gives you the opportunity to give your opinion on what you might like to see as a theme.
All right, cool. Yeah. All right. So we'll stop sharing and hope to see everyone this weekend at in Harrisburg. And also see Greg, probably Martin, and a few other people. So we look forward to seeing you guys. So I will turn it back over to you, Jim.
And we really want to, and Chris, we really want to thank you for donating 2 kits that we're giving away as prizes for people that come by the NewTracks modeling table and sign up with their email. Then you get a chance to win one of those country houses, and it's really a nice model, and I think it's really great of you, Chris, to donate 2 of those kits. We're going to be giving away one of them as a prize on Friday, and then another one on Saturday. So if you come and sign up for Friday, then you get a chance to win the 2 kits. If you come Saturday, then you miss the Friday kit because it'll already be given away, but you still can register for the one for Saturday. So we're looking forward to a lot of people coming to the table and signing up for the kits. And we're also going to have a video. The video is going to include Chris's company, Conowingo Models, as the sponsor for this show because he was kind enough to donate the kits. And it also includes something about our scholarship program, as well as NewTracks in general. So we hope you enjoy seeing our video that's going to be running on our television. And of course, our banner will be there with our QR code and so forth. So we're looking forward to a lot of people coming to our table. This is the first time that we have tried this kind of additional work at our table at a show, and if it goes as well as we hope it does, then we'll be doing more of these around the country. But Al's show at Harrisburg is our guinea pig, so to speak, for this, and we really appreciate Al for all of his help in making this possible for us, as well as Greg and Steve and Martin and Tom and all the people from NewTracks that are going to be attending the show. So thanks again, Chris. We really appreciate your help in this.
Yep. And this is a, you asked me to put up a,
well, with that said, let's
demo.
start the show.
And this is that the kit that will be given away. So it'll be sitting on the NewTracks table. So that'll be this is actually the kit that
Fantastic.
will
Thank you so very much
on the NewTracks table. So
thank you. Well, I'd like to start the show with our segment on O-scale modeling. And this is sponsored by O-Scale Central Organization. And if we could run that video, please.
I'm David Vaughn of O-Scale Central. O-Scale 2-rail, models built to 1:48 scale and running on 2-rail track, is the best kept secret in model railroading. We're pleased to team with Jim Kello to introduce O-Scale 2-rail to NewTracks viewers. O-Scale 2-rail is for modelers. At twice the scale and 8 times the mass of HO, O-Scale's heft and ease of modeling create an outstanding model railroading experience. O-Scale 2-rail modeling is as varied as railroading itself. Modern era, transition or old time, standard gauge or narrow. A wide variety of models is available at affordable prices. There is a supportive community and lots of shows, clubs, and events. You can explore O-Scale 2-rail by going to our website, oscalecentral.com. You will find information about the scale and how to get started, as well as a free searchable scale-wide product and service guide and listings of coming O-Scale events. You will also find information about how to join O-Scale Central. We promote O-Scale 2-Rail and support modelers in the scale. When your eyes are going bifocular, when you need fresh challenges, keep O-Scale 2-Rail in mind. Check us out, oscalecentral.com. Thanks.
Well, now I want to turn to the host for this segment of our show, David Schultz. David, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. We're in the middle of a thunderstorm here, so if my internet cuts out and I disappear, you'll kind of know what happened. But anyway, today we're going to talk about details. Now, I know that you can detail almost any model in any scale. I chose O-Scale because you can just see the detail without using a jeweler's loupe.
David, I can't see your video. Maybe it's only me. I don't know. But I got you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim, you're having network issues. You have low bandwidth, so it may be on your end.
Okay.
Well, could have been my end too. Like I say, I'm in the middle of a hailstorm. So anyway, we're going to talk about detail. When I was young and fooling with my Lionel train set, the one thing that always kind of bothered me about Lionel was the lack of detail. And I was, even at a young age, I was crazy. And you can talk to my mother about me bringing in potting soil and dumping it over my rails to put down some ballast. And she wasn't very happy with me when she had to clean up that mess. But I took one of my Lionel boxers one time and I pulled the trucks off it and I set it on the ground. And I started detailing it. I put electrical box on. And of course, I was just using whatever I had laying around the house. So I think I used a thumbtack for the electrical meter and a piece of wood doweling for the telephone pole. But anyway, I got the bug early in detailing. So anyway, I'll get set up here because I'm old fashioned. So I have to do it the old fashioned way here to get set up for my photos. So, but I know you can detail in other scales. That's never been an issue, but I like the size of this because you can see stuff in my world so much easier than, like I say, having to put on glasses and stuff. But like I say, I know that there are people out there who do some pretty amazing stuff. So anyway, waiting for this. This is what I mean by you can detail in almost any scale, because here is a grain of rice carved into the Statue of Liberty inside the eye of a needle. But, you're not just going to see that with the naked eye, but this is how small people can get. And, I went on a website looking up small carvings, and it is unbelievable what some people have done. So anyway, we'll start this little show with one of my favorite cabooses that I built. This was an old Ambroid kit. And of course, the kit itself came with the wrong style of railings and such. The NP had kind of unique angle iron railings and such. So I built all the railings and stuff and put the brake wheel there, the chain, so they could uncouple the caboose. When they had helpers, they just step out the door and they could turn the plug and lift the coupler and then wave the engineer down and they'd cut away and the train would continue on its way. So this is looking down at the roof, and you can make a real nice tar paper roof using paper tape and some paint and such. But then you open up the top and we can look down inside the car and we can see that the bunks are in place there. There's plates and cups on the table. Apparently lunch is ready. And it looks like today we're going to be having eggs and coffee. And I modeled a fry pan on top of the coal stove, and I was able to put eggs in that pan. It's just a couple drops of white paint. And then I took a needle with little yellow and I put little yellow dots in the middle of it. And but this is the kind of stuff I really enjoy. It's just getting this really fine detail in there. Here is my dining car with flowers on the table, and that was rather an interesting build. I carved all those vases out of clear plastic rod. I think I used my lathe for that, and then I would drill a hole in them, and then I stuck these model flowers in the tables. And more little detail. It's hard to see in this, but that little rack off to the left of the sinks is the rack that holds all the knives. I actually made knives out of brass wire. I'd hammer it flat and then file it down to make knife blades out of them, and then painted the handles brown. And you can see the sinks got the faucet there and some of the plumbing, and the freezer's off to the left. Once again, I love building detail into my models. Here's the lounge portion, which is kind of nice. I got ashtrays there. I even have some cigarette ashes in the bottom of the ashtrays, along with all the chairs. This was an attempt to using flock on the chairs. I'm not 100% happy with it, but until I find something better, we'll just go with that at the moment. The carpet on there is printed on a computer printer. My son, Michael, likes to look up different floorings for me for old cars and shrink it down and make paper printout flooring for me. And here's once again, looking at the tables and chairs, the flowers on the tables. And then the picture on the wall there. My wife's great grandfather or uncle, great uncle, I think it was. He was a painter, and he painted a picture of Mount St. Helens. And I found that picture online under his site that they dedicated to his artistry. And so I printed that off. And once again, my son Michael, who's the computer guy in the world, he shrunk that down to O scale. I built a little frame around it and hung it on the wall. So that's where the Mount St. Helens picture, since it's a Great Northern car, naturally it'd have Mount St. Helens on it. And then looking the other way, of course, we got the empire builder himself and his son. This is kind of a famous picture. There was a picture of a wheat stalk between the two of them that was taller than they were. And I cut the picture in half and once again, just kind of framed it and mounted it on the walls. And I figured that'd be appropriate in the diner. They'd want to show that off. But, and once again, another parlor, chairs, ashtrays, different kind of flooring on there. And I love trying to get smaller and smaller with the details. I had one time I was going to use fiber optics to make cigarettes sticking out of the ashtrays, but I don't have any people in my cars yet, and I've got to learn how to paint people before I can start that. I'm not 100% satisfied with how I paint figures yet, so I'm going to keep working on that until I get to that point. And then it'd be kind of fun if a guy could have like wisps of smoke coming out of the ashtray too, but that might be getting a little crazy. Here's a little triple combine I made. When I went to Denver, I entered the Mount Hood, which is another, SP&S passenger car. And I didn't put any toilet paper or paper towel holders in my bathrooms. Well, the gentleman that beat me had toilet paper and paper towel holders. And now that's kind of a standard addition to my passenger car building now is I've got to have little toilet paper rolls on the walls and the paper towel dispenser along with the sink and the toilet. So it just made me bring it up a little more until I enter another contest and some guy beats me with something even finer. It's just kind of a competition to try and keep ahead of the curve. 3D printing is going to be a real challenge because you're going to be able to do stuff like this. And the only part about 3D printing I'm not happy with is that the creativity is going to kind of disappear, because if you can just 3D print this bathroom and stick it in there, I mean, it took a bit to build those toilet paper rolls. It was fun, and it's nice to brag and such, but the 3D printing, and this is the only negative part I find about it. I think it's going to be fantastic in the future, but it's the scratch building part of it that I feel is really going to be hurt by 3D printing eventually. And maybe it needs to go. I don't know. But this is the part of the hobby I really enjoy. Here is a little roomette sleeper that I made. And I have curtains on the walls. I've got the rods there. This was a real show of a severe behavioral disorder when you go through this much work to put curtains and curtain rods on the wall. Now I think I'm just going to print them and decal them on the walls. I'm not going to go through this trouble. But anyway, you can see in there, in a couple of the rooms, I had the beds down. And then in one of my poorer efforts, I put a guy in bed in one of the rooms. So when people look in there, they can see how the bedrooms looked when the bed was down. So that was another car that I won first place in. I originally had a guy in the bathroom there, and I strategically placed a curving brass wire from from his midsection down into the toilet. And some people thought that was funny, and other people were a little bit appalled, so I removed him. This is my RPO that I made. The Northern Pacific had an RPO dormitory section. The RPO section was 30 feet, and the dormitory was the other 60 feet of the car. The flooring in this turned out so spectacular. It was total accident. I glued the floor down using JB Weld. And as I would stick the boards down to the floor, the JB Weld would ooze up between the boards. Well, of course, in my panic, I couldn't get in there quick enough to get it wiped out. And when I did, it left gray streaks on the floor. But when I was finished, it actually looked like an older floor with graying timbers from the wear marks and such. So it actually was a nice little touch. The once again, the pigeonholes is another sign of a severe behavioral disorder. I took a little brass square and I soldered all of that together, and then I machined it off and glued the whole thing together into the RPO section. So there's like 200 pigeonholes in that whole thing there. And then the letters that are on the table, once again, my son Michael found a website for RPO stamps. Well, he was able to take a lot of those letters and shrink them down into O-scale size. And what's really bizarre about that printer is if you looked at those letters through a jeweler's loupe or even a microscope, you can read the addresses on there. I don't know how the printer can do that, but that was pretty spectacular. But the tables are covered with letters, along with a few letters on the pigeonhole there. And the two mail sacks in the corner were made using the foil packs out of the cigarettes. Marlboro hard packs have that silver foil inside there. And I flip that inside out, and I'll shape it into mail sacks. I can make antimacassars out of it. I use it for all kinds of things, but really handy stuff. It's a nice texture on it. Works really well for, like I say, mail sacks. And I think even the mail bags themselves are made from that same paper. Here's the dormitory section. I put pillows in there. The showers, of course, have got mirrors on the wall, which was just plastic with some of that metal foil put over the top of it. So you get a nice shine on that, nice reflection in there. The pillows I made, and I covered those with that same foil paper. The checkerboard flooring is just, once again, computer printed and glued in the bottom. This is another diner. You can see the coffee pot or the urn, and got the sinks. You got the bread warmers, you got the dishwashers, and you get the little coal bin there, because in this car, the stove was still coal fired. The wood flooring is printed flooring. That's put it down there. And then, of course, all the refrigerators and such are there. So once again, I love, this is my son's car, actually. We have a bit of a competition trying to outdo each other on detail. And I put my dining car against his in Chicago, and he beat me by 1 point. And they wrote up that the only thing missing in his car was the smell of bacon coming from the kitchen. But you know, we're gonna do a challenge this next year, so we'll see who's got the best detail this next year. This was the part of his dining car. He used microscope slides to make those partitions, and then he glued those little Hiawatha emblems, which are actually supposed to go on the outside of the car, but he glued those in there, put in some of that clear red that I think it's Tamiya's got the clear colors, put that in there. And I said that this is what beat me, is that his partition was so much nicer than mine. But you can see the chairs and the tables with the silverware on the table. A lot of fun. But detail isn't just for passenger cars, freight cars. It also ends up on O-scale track. You can get some fantastic detail. There's some stuff available, like all of these adjustable plates on here. James and I both put 4 spikes per tie, and angle bars. We'll take sectional track and we'll cut it into 39-foot sections, and we'll put the angle bars in there just to make it look like jointed rail all the way. The little switch stands are kind of a new outfit. I can't remember the name of the company that makes those, but they're really fantastic. They've got a LED inside of them. Then they make a little circuit board that makes the light flicker if you want to have kerosene lamps, or steady if you want to have electric lamps. And that's quite the detail when you get that hooked up. But here another view of the adjustable plates, the slide plate, insulated in the middle. And you actually have to glue some kind of insulator in there because it's all brass. And if you solder that together and put it on your track and you short out, although the dead rail people will probably enjoy that. But then when you ballast this all up, you end up with this kind of a setup. And we've had people come over to the layouts and just stand and stare at the turnouts. They're just absolutely blown away at the level of detail on this. And this is what I really enjoy about O-Scale, is that you can do things like this. And it just, if you have a small layout, it kind of pays to really pay attention to the fine detail. So this is, I was telling you about how cutting all the rail. You don't cut all the way through. We just cut the ball of the rail and then we'll glue the tie plates in place. So it gives the simulation of jointed rail. But this is my son James's layout again. And the Milwaukee Road out in Montana used gravel for the most part. Stony gravel was their ballast back in the day. So he was able to take some of the ballast. He mixed some clay, some dirt, whatever else he could find. He mixed it all together and put it on there. And I thought it turned out really well, really well. This is the end of one of his cars showing the angle cock and the glad hand. He hasn't got them painted yet, but it stood out pretty well. So I asked him for a photo of that. So I've got some cars where I've actually found magnets small enough. I'll put them in the glad hands. And I know there was an article in a magazine. That's where I got the idea from. And the hoses are what they call larva lace, which is used in making for fly fishing. Really flexible tubing. And you can put a little magnet in that glad hand. And when the cars come together, the hoses will actually attach. And when you detach, the hoses will actually hang on and pop apart just like the real thing. It's kind of fun. And then this is just more of the same, turnouts, spikes, jointed rail, some of the cars and such. And my last photo is my grain elevator. This is a Lionel grain elevator, and I actually put in all of the wood beams, all the woodwork. I've got lights in there. I've got the lift in front of you there. That's what the chains are. In the old-fashioned days, tractors used to bring in flare boxes. Well, they didn't have a hydraulic dump on them, so they'd roll them onto this plate, and then there was a winch that would lift the one end of the flare box up so they could dump it into the pit. But I've got the leg in there. If you take the top off of this grain elevator, you can see the top of the leg with all the different spouts going to the different bins. And so this is the kind of stuff I enjoy, just minute little detail. So that's my story on detailing. It could go on forever because I just touched on freight cars, passenger cars, and some of the track, but never even looked at the locomotives. But we'll keep it at that for now.
David, I'll tell you, it's absolutely beautiful. Anybody have any questions for David? David, thank you so very much. I agree with you on scratch building. I hope we never lose it because that's a part of the hobby that I love.
Yeah, it's the part that I truly love. I love taking things that you wouldn't even think about and turn it into.
Thank you so much for your help.
Yep, you're welcome.
Well, now I'd like to turn to High Rail Modeling. The sponsor for this segment of our show is Millhouse River Studios. And if we can run that video, please.
Millhouse River Studio builds model train working accessories that are made to last generations. Millhouse River products are built out of aluminum and have scale brass details that even the most demanding scale modeler will appreciate. Since our industry entry in 2009 with the introduction of our flagship turntable, Millhouse River has continued to add new, innovative products, like our scale transfer table, rotary coal dumper, flood coaling tower and, most recently, a working conveyor that transports coal from the dumper to the loader. All of Millhouse River Studio's stunningly realistic products are currently available in O-Scale. We are adding new scales on some products, including the upcoming release of an HO scale turntable featuring our aluminum construction and stunning brass details that is big enough to handle a big boy locomotive. When it comes to your layout, don't settle for less, Get Millhouse River Studio.
And our host for this segment of the show is Mr. Dennis Brennan. Dennis, welcome.
Hi, Jim.
How are you?
I'm doing well, and hi, guys. I'm going to put a little plug for myself here. The coal that you see being dumped out of Millhouse River Studios coal dumper and his other accessories, guess where that comes from, guys? Brennan's Model Railroading. And it's the only coal he recommends, and it's real Reading anthracite coal. You can't beat it. Okay, enough for that. Interesting, tonight I'm going to talk about wiring, or maybe what you shouldn't do in wiring. I recently had a request from someone who lives in Maryland. Could I come and help him get his layout running after 25 years of just sitting dormant? And it was originally wired by a friend of his who was an electrician and a model railroader, so he should know what he was doing. And I assumed this wouldn't be much of a problem, so off I went. So now we are going to share this right here. Is that coming up, guys? You see that?
Yes.
All right. Okay,
Yes.
wiring 101. Does this look familiar? I think we've all seen it. Well, that's kind of what I saw too. But before that, I took a look around. And this was the wiring on the underneath the layout. The electrician did an incredible job. I mean, everything was labeled and numbered. Everything went to terminal strips. I mean, look how neat that is. All the wires were bundled nicely. And so I thought, okay, no problem. We'll just get right to it. And the first order of business, here's another view. And you can see he had everything numbered. These RCS stands for remote control sections. Now, this was a Lionel layout, traditional Lionel layout, where he bought all the accessories way back, well, back in the 90s when it was Model Products Corporation. General Mills took over Lionel, and most of the stuff was being made in Mexico at that time. But I digress. At any rate, he had every accessory known to man on this layout. And so all of the remote control sections, which are needed for your operating cars, were all labeled, numbered, the wires color-coded. And then over here, these are all part of your switch machine wiring. And if I go back one, that's all switch machine wiring layout right here. So I thought, great. And again, you can see main 026 switches, 1, 2, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, then here's the accessory control panel, very neatly arranged. You can see part of his layout up here. So the first order of business for me was to make sure that the track was clean. And I can't stress that enough. And so we did that. Now here's a view of, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think there were 5 ZW transformers here, and then he had another 2 on another console. These all operated various things. One of them was for switches. Great, wonderful, turnouts. Another one was for the various accessories. Another one was for all of the lighting, I guess. Another one was, I don't even know. And the other thing is, he had ground wires everywhere. Now, I'm not sure why he did this. These these ZW transformers have 4 different circuits in each one, A, B, C, and D, and they all have a common ground inside. They're all connected, yet he ran separate ground wires from every single one of these transformers. I have no idea why, because typically one ground wire should be enough if it's a sufficient size. And with the voltage and amperage that we're using, with the amperage we're using on these layouts, I can't imagine that you would need all of this. So I never did get an explanation for why that was. So here, let's go back. All right, now we get to underneath the layout. What happened? Here's all of the nice cables, but then it turned into a spaghetti maze. And if something didn't work, it was impossible to track down where the wires went. I mean, this right here is basically, I think, all the switch machine stuff, but then he had layout sections. The layout was divided into sections, each operated by an on-off toggle. I think they were actually double pole, double throw, so we could run more than one train. This was the way it was done back in the day before command control. And so I assumed that all of that wiring was done first, and it was all cabled and neatly done. But then with all the accessories that he had on the layout, and I'm not sure whether he did it or whether the layout owner did it, but each accessory layout wire was run separately. If it was cabled up, I couldn't find it. And you end up with this nightmare underneath the layout. I had to put in some lights myself. Okay, so now here, this is not his layout. This is a professional wiring job done by TW Trainworks in Dallas. Now they make layouts for museums and for individuals. They're not cheap, but they have to have a consistent type of wiring. All of their layouts are built. I mean, any layout builder has to build in sections. You're not gonna, so the sections are all modular, and then they get joined together and the seams are covered over once the layout gets put in place. But the wiring is standard from section to section. And what they did is they used color codes. So there is one ground wire for everything. And it doesn't matter whether it's AC or DC, the same black wire is used for ground, and you can run both things through it, both AC and or DC, using the same ground. You don't have to run a separate wire, 2 separate wires for every accessory. That's a mistake that a lot of people make. And he has one color for lights, he's got another color for switches, he's got another color for power, he's got another color for accessories. And what he has done is they're all wired to these, I think these are Euro connectors. And then he has like just pieces of wire strung between them. And so each module, which this is one of them, all of the wires for that particular module get soldered on to one of these wires, depending on where it's going to go. So at any rate, that's not to say that you should do this. This is overkill. But there's a few things we can learn here. One of them is, you notice that it's all painted white underneath the layout. This is a fireproof paint that they use that just happens to be white. Now, we don't really need to use fireproof paint on our layout. You can if you want, but if you're a custom layout builder, I'm assuming that that's really kind of necessary just in case, so that you can't be accused of any kind of negligence. But the key here is that it's white. And if it's white, you could easily paint the underside of your layout white before you do any wiring. And guess what? Look at how everything shows up. And the other thing they did is they stapled the wires right up to the layout, and they have like a rabbit hole in underneath. Didn't mean to do that. They have a rabbit hole underneath, and at any rate, we can go back here because we don't need to see any more of that. If I can just get back to where I was. Hold on. I'm not sure how I get back. Oh, here we go. Let's see. How do I get out of this? Okay, here we go. Okay, so the point is that you can do the similar thing, and wires don't have to be hanging in a tangled mess. And the other thing that you need to do is make a wiring diagram. It can be simple, but the things that I think are important is use a color code. You have basically you need a ground and a hot. All right, you need 2 wires. You can run them the length of the layout if you want, and you'll need a hot for each of your separate circuits, or you'll need 1 wire at any rate for each of your separate circuits. So accessories could be yellow, switches could be whatever color you want. Street lights could be another color. So that's my suggestion. And I would try to keep, what I do personally is I still use solenoid switch machines, old school. That's how it started. Those have like 12 contacts on each one of them. I wired each one of them to a terminal strip that's immediately below the switch machine, right onto the layout. And they're all wired exactly the same way. Then I ran all of the wires to another terminal strip that's right in the front of my layout, so I can get at it. They're all wired the same way. Now, if I need to add, I'm not using some of those circuits. I'm not using most of them. But if I had to add signaling, it's just a simple matter of tying into the proper terminal strip screws, and I'm all set. So that's something that I think you ought to think about, especially like if you've got streets with cars on them that have wires, and you got street lights. I would just make sure that you have a way that you can disconnect things. Now, what I use is, besides terminal strips, I use crimp connectors, and I also use wire nuts. Now, some people say, oh, no, don't use crimp connectors. Don't use wire nuts. Not good. Well, if you want to lay on your back and solder underneath the layout, more power to you. But if you look at your house wiring, guess what they use inside those metal boxes? Guess what? They use twist connectors. So if it's good enough for house wiring, it should certainly be good enough for your layout. And and crimp connectors, those are fine. I string a black and a red for my power, and then I just use a crimp connector and put in another wire coming from that, and you can do that anywhere on that red wire. And on the black wire, you can put a crimp connector anywhere. You don't have to cut anything. Add a wire to it, and you're all set to go. If you need, if you have several different accessories or things that have to be hooked up in the same general area, you can bring them all to one basic spot and use a twist connector on it. And then take another wire and run it to, run it to the hot, from your crimp connector to a twist to your accessories. So that's pretty simple. I've had a layout in my basement now for 35 years and never once has one of those connections ever failed me. So think about it. Keep it simple. Once you start adding accessories, it's real easy to get that spaghetti maze because you keep adding wires. Oh, it's only 2 wires. Well, 2, 4, 6, it multiplies. So just think of a way that you can keep that wiring down. And if I hope some of this helps. So that's it for today. I hope that made sense. And thanks for if you have any questions, and just give me a holler. So back to you, Jim.
Anybody have any questions for Dennis?
Dennis, did you get the layout running?
Yes, we did. The layout was running, but the problem was, I'm glad you asked that question. The problem was that the accessories didn't work. Now, some of them you couldn't even get at, and trying to find where they were underneath the layout was impossible. So that's another clue, another suggestion is label underneath your layout where something comes through. Just take a magic marker and make a code up for yourself so that you know that this is where that item comes through, because when you got a bunch of stuff close together, almost impossible to find the wiring. Well, what we discovered, even though I couldn't trace the wiring, what we discovered is that these accessories sat for so long and they had a lot of rubber band type drives. Guess what happens to a rubber band that's left for ages and ages? It dries up. It's broken. So that's another thing. So but we did get it running. The accessories we determined were FUBAR for the most part. And some things, switches, they needed to be worked back and forth. Track needed to be clean. That was the biggest problem in getting things running. The track had to be clean and the wheels had to be cleaned. So I can't stress that enough. Clean, clean, clean. And so that was it. Yes, we did get it running. Customer was happy.
So a couple of comments. Now it's Phil at home.
Dennis?
So a couple of quick comments. If you haven't used Wago connectors, everyone should check out Wago connectors. They're these lever connectors. A single connector will handle anything from a 12 gauge to a 22 gauge wire. And you can buy them in blocks of 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can run one wire in. If you want to use them for doing drops to the track, you can run your bus feeder in either side and run a center feed up to the track. They're brilliant. And the beauty of them is they make troubleshooting much more reasonable, because if you've got a block with a short, you can start pulling things off and checking and seeing when the short goes away and isolate. So really good. You can buy them at Home Depot. You buy a pack of 50 for about $20. So they're about 30, 40 cents each. They're not terribly cheap, but no solder in your face, and they seem to last forever. I just got done rewiring a fairly large, 100, 110, 120 foot by 20 foot O-scale layout. We bought a labeler that will do shrink wrap labels. It's about $100. You can buy the label tape on Amazon. The beauty of it is you can print out labels, put them on the wires and shrink wrap them. If you've got 2 wires, you can shrink wrap them together. And it really does dramatically reduce the effort to go find things when you do do all of your wires labeled that way so you can find them. So agree with you 100%. That little bit of time you spend in the beginning will be very helpful down the road. The other thing we did, we have a large number of Switchmaster switch machines, and they tend to, if they don't get used fairly regularly, they do tend inside there's supposed to be some lubrication. It tends to kind of lock up. So what we did is we took the output of the switch machine power, ran it to basically a double bolt, double throw switch. And you can literally flip the switch and flip every switch machine on the layout. So you actually have a single switch, and you can just get in the habit of every day going over two or three times, and it exercises all the turnouts on your layouts, even the ones that you almost never use. So a few little hints in electrical for those large layouts like you're dealing with there.
Thank you. That's really good. I haven't used the Wago connectors. I know what you're talking about. And yes, I think they are fantastic. And if I was going to do anything, I would be using them now. So good suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Phil. Dennis, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. We'll be here with bells on.
Well, now I want to introduce Sherri Johnson. Sherri, as you know, owns Cat's Paw Company and just came out with the new product, ExtraTrack. And Sherri is going tonight start a new series on our show about the new technology. Tonight it's about CAD, what's available and the different kinds of CAD that's available and what can it do. Sherri, welcome. I really appreciate you doing this.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And let me get my screen shared here. Make sure I'm doing this right. And of course it's arguing, oh, it doesn't, hold on here. I missed fixing one thing on this computer that I didn't do. Okay. Okay, are we sharing now? There we go. Okay, so it happens when you travel and you're not on your home computer. Okay. And tonight, as Jim mentioned, we're going to discuss CAD, what it is, and what it can do. First of all, what is CAD? Now, CAD is basically computer-aided design. It's software that runs on the computer, and it allows you to draw things, 2D images, 3D images, and basically you draw the stuff on a computer versus back in the old days doing it all by hand. And I just dated myself because when I took my first mechanical drafting course, it was by hand. And that's actually a picture from my classroom. I actually found an old picture there. The one thing that you can never do with traditional 2D drawing and by hand is to actually create an object in 3 dimensions that you could rotate and look at, which being able to draw on the computer, you can do that with CAD. The other great thing is you can share CAD files easily. If I have drawn something on my computer, I can share that file to you across the country and you can open it up and look at it and go, hey, I don't like the way this looks. If that had been done by hand, I would have had to mail it to you or fax it to you to get input. So basically it's taking something that was done traditionally for years and years and years and moved it over to the computer. Which brings me to my little history lesson because I had to throw this in there. CAD has been around since the 1960s. It ran on large mainframe computers, had specialty workstations, and back then CAD was short for computer-aided drafting because all you could do was basically, mechanical drawings, which was considered drafting. 1982, let's see, IBM had already released their desktop computer. Autodesk came along and said, you know what? We need a drawing package for the masses. We need something away from the mainframe and something that the everyday user can start creating mechanical drawings. 1982, AutoCAD came out with Autodesk, or Autodesk came out with AutoCAD rather. And as we say from there, it's history. Back in the 82, you still had to have a special operator because it took a lot of training to use to figure out how to use AutoCAD back then. It was not very intuitive. I remember during that mechanical drawing class, I had one assignment to use AutoCAD. And I was happy to go back to my drafting table. The late 80s, early 90s, we started to see more software come out there, more things become available where you could do two-line drawings, you could do 3D modeling, you could edit photos. And that's when the description of CAD changed from just drafting to computer-aided design. So now CAD kind of encompasses anything that you can design on the computer, whether it's animation, virtual reality, 3D drawings, 2D drawings, your specialized software for designing model railroad layouts. That all now falls under the heading of CAD and computer-aided design. Not only with the advancement of that, the software, the dedicated CAD software has the option where you can export files so that you can use them directly, or with a couple of other steps, you can use the items that you've drawn on the computer to run a 3D printer. So you can draw something and send it to the printer to print. You can draw something in CAD and send it over to a laser printer to have it laser cut, or to a CNC machine where you can have it milled. So it took out the part where somebody drew it by hand and somebody had to figure out how to mill it. You can now go from one step to the other with just the CAD software. Now, there are different types of CAD, and I'm going to break these down into a few categories here. I'm going to start with 2D CAD, which would have been 2D drafting. Everything's two-dimensional. Paper drawings, this is what you can do at your desk with pencil and paper. It's good for architectural blueprints, engineering drawings. Also under the realm of 2D CAD, because it went from drafting to include drawing, are vector graphics, SVG images, which I know the laser guys use a lot. And it basically lets you draw an object just using lines. We're still doing everything flat because it's 2D. Then we get into the realm of 3D drawings or 3D CAD. This is where you can look at things from different angles, different dimensions, and it's made from raised images. It's no longer flat. And I love this, where you can spin it around, look at things, take a look at it. This type of CAD I'm going to reference as hard surface modeling. Everything here has flat lines or circles or can be easily measured. It's considered hard surfaces. There's nothing organic or bouncy or not hard. Even your cylinders are considered hard. Which brings us to our next form of CAD, which I'm going to call, it's been called freeform, it's been called organic, it's called digital sculpting. No matter how you look at it, it now falls under the CAD because it's designed on the computer. Freeform is used for all those things that don't have straight edges. Like we see here, you can create sheets and drape things. Freeform or sculpting would come in where you're creating figures and animals, or adding little details that can't be drawn with a square or a circle. Then we have what I call specialized CAD applications. This is where it takes your 3D CAD and comes back and says, we're going to take 3D CAD, but the only thing we're going to do in here is figures. This software is dedicated to making figures and animals and people. That's all this is doing, specialized CAD. Specialized CAD would be your track planning software, your digital painting, animation, your virtual reality and gaming. These all build on the other CAD platforms, but they're specialized to one thing. Advantages of CAD. I kind of mentioned a couple already. The first one is accuracy and precision. Something you couldn't do by hand drafting would be to zoom in or look at closely at what you're drawing. You're drawing it and you're hoping that you've got it drawn precisely. With online CAD, using it on the computer, you can draw it, but then you can zoom in to look at it to make sure all the little lines match and that you've got it drawn correctly. And as I've gotten older, and I heard it mentioned earlier, as you get to that bifocular age, you like the ability to zoom into things. And I think I do everything zoomed in. I don't think I do anything at regular size. It's also great when you're coming to making changes and updates and working with other people. You can draw the base CAD, you can get a group of people together, take a look at that CAD image and file, and they go, hey, I want this changed, that changed, and this changed. Well, back in the old days, somebody had to go back and redraw that all from scratch because they didn't let you use erasers. With CAD and being able to do it on the computer, you start with the drawing you had, you make a new copy because you want to keep your history, and you make those changes. You don't have to start from scratch. You can just make the changes that are needed and then move on. Additional advantages, again, we mentioned and I showed earlier, the 3D visualization, being able to spin it around and look at all sides. It's important because you can draw something and it looks great from the top, but then when you flip it over, you're like, wow, I really didn't expect it to look like that on the inside or the bottom. Being able to look at all the sides and surfaces is a big plus. It helps with error reduction. Now, I threw this in here because some of the higher end CAD packages have little features in there that will tell you that, oh, you designed this, but you missed a chamfer, or you designed this, but those two lines are too close together. It will actually look at and point out issues with your files. And as artificial intelligence comes in, which is going to be another topic, we're going to see, I see this becoming a larger feature in the lower level packages where it's going to look at it and go, hey, you drew this box, but you only put a chamfer on 3 sides. Don't you need it on the other side too? And we mentioned, and I'm going to mention again, the ease of sharing. I mean, being able to sit here and show you a picture and show people around the world a picture, being able to collaborate just by being able to see it digitally. That is something you cannot do with paper and pencil. Of course, with everything that has advantages, there's going to be disadvantages. One of those is cost. Now, the next segment, I look at different, actually the next 2 segments, I'm going to look at different types of CAD packages. I'm going to include some pricing. And as I was starting my research, I looked at packages that were free, which were great. And then some of the ones I looked at that were highly recommended started at $14,000 a year. And I went, that's a little out of my budget. Also, learning CAD can be challenging. You know, it's easy to sit down with a ruler and a pencil and a piece of paper and start drawing something. If you're not familiar with using a mouse or a keyboard, figuring out what all the little pictures on their screens mean, it can be challenging. And some CAD packages still require licensing by professionals in order for you to actually purchase it and use it. And the other thing that I think is a disadvantage is going to be the over-reliance on CAD. People are going to start with their modeling and go, well, I want to model this. Oh, but I can only draw it in my CAD program and do this. Well, that shouldn't stop you from making that model. Just because you can't draw it in the CAD program doesn't mean you shouldn't model it. And it may come that you're going to need more than one CAD package. For everything that I design, I probably use 2 or 3 different CAD packages. I will use a hard surface modeling. I will use the freeform to finish things off. It's going to be a combination, but I still don't want that to limit people's imaginations. I want people to go, oh, even though I can't draw it on the computer, I can still build that from scratch. And it might be that you can build it from scratch faster than you could draw it on the CAD program. And that's fine too. CAD is just a tool in your toolbox. I get asked what skills are required to use CAD. And I didn't put the most important one on here, which is patience. Lots and lots of patience. Some of the technical skills that you could use or that are needed to work with CAD would definitely be understanding scales, the scale that you want to draw and model in, and the scale that you're actually drawing in. You know, you might decide to draw something full size, so you're drawing a full 8-foot size something, and then later you're going to scale it down. Or you might decide to actually draw it in the scale you're looking at. It's like, okay, I'm going to draw this in 1/64 scale, so my 1 foot equals this, and this is what I need to draw my thing in. Understanding X, Y, and Z, especially when it comes to 3D CAD. One of the things that bothers me is some programs have X and Y, as shown in the picture here, with X and with Z going up and down, up into the air. Other CAD programs have X and Z on the same plane with Y going up and down. So you have to watch these things, but understanding the 3 different dimensions and angles is important, knowing that you're going to have 3 of them no matter which way they're labeled. Also, knowledge of the items that you want to draw. You know, if you have no basic understanding of a figure, you're not going to want to try and create a person from scratch, because, you know, arms only bend a certain way. You need to know the limitations of what you can do with an actual person. One of the reasons I've never designed a steam engine in CAD is because I don't know enough about it. I look at the pretty pictures, I see all the parts and it looks cool, but I don't understand enough how they all work together for me to draw that particular object. So these things are kind of important too. Where do I think CAD is going to go? Well, cloud-based CAD is all around us. Again, we're doing the research, and it's great because that way you don't have to have a computer on your desk that's the highest end to run a high-end CAD package. You can have a computer, an everyday average personal computer. You can start drawing, and it is the computer on the other end running that software that has all the processing power. The downside is you have to be connected to the internet, and you have to have a really good connection to the internet. If you've got really slow or spotty, cloud-based CAD is not going to be a solution. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. This, I think, is going to play a huge role. First, in actually catching your errors, which is what I would like to use it for. But one of the things that, which we'll cover in the artificial intelligence, is some places where you put your drawings and they put them online in a library, they're actually using those files to boost artificial intelligence, so it can go out there and go, hey, somebody has created this, or 5 somebodies have created this. So artificial intelligence is going to come back, take those 5 models and create its own version and actually create something from scratch. So you just sit down and say, hey, I want a big boy engine, and boom, the CAD program is going to come back and give you a big boy engine. I think we're still a ways away from that. I hope, because that takes all the fun out of drawing stuff. But I think at some point we may get there. Virtual reality. This is cool. This one I would love to do, because you see on TV, and I love watching like some of this old the CSI shows, and they're just sitting there, or the Marvel comics, and you got Tony Stark and he's just waving his hands around in the air, and you got this really cool thing being drawn in the air and you can see it. I would love to be able to do that right now. To do that now, you have to wear, you know, those the funky virtual reality glasses, which when I wear those, I fall down. I am not coordinated enough to draw and do without that. Now, in one of my magazines I just saw, they actually have a monitor to do virtual visualization like this without the need for the 3D glasses or this VR headset. I'm excited about that because I really want to see that happening. I want to be able to sit there and move things around with my hand and stretch and add and subtract. I just think that would be really cool. Generative design. This is something that's already out there in Fusion 360 and some of the higher end. This is where you draw something and you think you've got it drawn and you've got all the piece parts put together and it looks good, because you may need to break it apart to manufacture it or break it apart to install it. And the generative design takes a look at what you've drawn, and then it goes back and it redraws it multiple times until it comes back with a better version. It may come back and say, okay, you can make this thinner and this will still work. You can cut and slice it here. This will make it easier to assemble. Now, like I said, Fusion 360 still has this, and it actually helped me with designing Invisitrax when I designed the gears, because it came back and said, no, this gear ratio would work better than that gear ratio. And if your gear is this thick, it would work better than this. And if it's too thin, it won't work at all. And it helped me determine friction ratios between my gears. I think when it comes especially to interactive designs, this generative design is going to be a plus. And I'm going to try and use it more often with some of my designs just to see if it can make things better than I can. Because, you know, just because I can do it that way and it works, it's great. There might be a better way. Personally, the best way for me is if it works. And that kind of brings me to the end of what is CAD, because we're just going to highlight tonight. Our next series, our next one, next weekend, we're actually going to discuss hard surface modeling, what it is, the different types of hard surface modeling, and the different software applications that you would use to do that type of work. On the 26th, we're going to take a look at the organic and the sculpting programs, where you can go in and do the blankets and the throws and the tarps and the soft-sided type objects. July 3rd, we're going to hit and talk about the specialized programs that are dedicated to doing specific things like animals and figures and that sort of thing. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions about the basic understanding of what is CAD and computer-aided design.
Anybody have any questions for Sherri?
What are the CAD programs you currently use?
The ones that I currently use, I use Tinkercad. I love Tinkercad because I can start something on my iPad and then throw it over onto Tinkercad on the computer. I use, in conjunction with that, Fusion 360, because I can then take my objects that I've drawn in Tinkercad, import them directly into Fusion. They have the thing where I can send it over there and work on it directly. Those are my two key for like mechanical drawings. I use DAZ 3D for creating the bases for my figures and animals when I start doing sculpting. I use Mesh Mixer, which is another soft surface type sculpting application. I've used, and if I was starting from scratch all over again, I would start with Shaper 3D because it's really cool. I love that application. Since we operate on a shoestring budget, I use a lot of the lower free versions of things that have a lot of functionality. I dabble, if I need something special, I might pop over to Maya, I might pop back over to SolidWorks, but my go-tos are Tinkercad, Fusion, Shaper, 3D Studio, or DAZ 3D, and Mesh Mixer.
Quite a repertoire.
Like I said, one program can't do it all. You need to have different ones for different specific things that you're working on, which is why we're going to get why I broke it down into the different types of modeling, and then we'll discuss specifics for each application in that category.
Sherri, thank you so very much. Look forward to seeing you again next week.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is how I enjoy spending my vacation, with you guys.
Have a safe trip. Well, now I want to turn to Andy Zimmerman, who is the chairman of the NMRA Conformance and Standards Committee. Andy, welcome.
Thank you. Once again, thank you for having me on. And Standards and Conformance Manager for the NMRA Nationals.
Okay. I'll never get over that. Well, listen, last week, Phil started to ask you some questions about direct wireless. And you said, well, maybe next week I'll be able to give you some information about that. So I'm going to see if you can give us some information about direct wireless.
Okay, well, so we had an interesting submission from one of our members, and he talked about wireless model railroading, and that it would be the future of model railroading. So he submitted a white paper to the NMRA, and then my team, my DCC team and my electrical team took a look at it, and then we invited him in to come in and talk about wireless model railroading. he and his partner came in and talked about wireless model railroading and the future of it, and how it would affect model railroading in the future. And then we discovered that there were some other individuals that had kind of toyed at it or played at it and said, hey, we had the same idea too. And they've been raising their hand over the last few weeks. And they want to come in and discuss it as well. But suffice it to say, the original gentleman that we were dealing with, he has built and sold several multi-million-dollar corporations. The last one, he sold it to Microsoft. And so this is his next thing that he wants to invest in, and he wants to see come to fruition and bring it to market. So he is developing wireless technology for model railroading, and wants the NMRA's help to develop standards in the process. So, and that's what we're doing right now. But it's gone past the, hey, I have an idea stage, and now it's in the how do we make this happen stage. And so my DCC group, my electrical group, and his group are working together to start to develop the standards for a wireless model railroading system that any or all manufacturers, if they develop it, would have to adhere to. So that's kind of the long and short of it. Was there something more specific?
Well, you've read the white paper, obviously, and you're getting involved with it. What's your opinion? Is it going to be the future of model railroad?
I think it has a serious shot at becoming the future of model railroading. So I think the way it incorporates wireless into the way they're discussing incorporating wireless into the system will be a boon for everybody. So
it would help me if you defined what you were talking about.
Well, I can't let we all signed non-disclosure agreements, so I can't let too much out of the bag. I'll tell you what, you ask me the question, I'll see if I can answer it. How's that?
Wireless can mean just about anything. Wireless throttles, wireless locomotives, wireless telephones. So when we say wireless, what are we talking about? What's the overall point?
So trying to think what part of that I can discuss. Well, darn, I don't want to put myself in hock with the NMRA, so I'm going to go back and ask him. I'll tell you what I can do. I can go back and ask him to actually discuss it here on the show, and then whatever he discloses, I'm not in trouble for. So, and I think that would better define. Will better define the question, or better define.
Okay. So today, if I put a receiver in a locomotive that's a wireless receiver that doesn't have to talk to the track, is that what we're talking about? I mean, that's simple.
Yes.
Simple concept. Okay. Because there's companies out there that have Bluetooth and a few of those things.
They already have Bluetooth in it, and they've got some specialized low frequency Bluetooth so that it travels much further distances than your standard Bluetooth, like on your Bluetooth mouse or your Bluetooth on your phone. There's some very proprietary Bluetooth systems out there that allow it to travel long distances, so you don't have to walk around and do whatever. The RF will have even greater distances, and will provide as much or more control.
Okay.
Again, kind of in its very infantile stages, or infant stages. I don't know if you should say infantile, infant stages.
When do you think based on what you know,
Mhm.
are we talking about a year, 5 years? What kind of a time frame do you think realistically this kind of new system may come about?
Well, knowing this guy, he'll want to move as fast as he possibly can to bring it to market.
Right.
So I'm going to say a couple of years, but you know, I have no way of specifically knowing the timelines.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me ask you this.
Chief,
Go ahead.
Chief, I got a question for you.
All right.
Where did dead rail fall into this?
You know, if the Bluetooth packages can, handle the dead rail, I don't see why the RF packages wouldn't be able to. So as long as it can power the receiver and it can power the motor, then you're good to go. The battery.
We have battery operation right now,
right,
which certainly eliminates 100% of the wiring to the track, which operates fine with the systems that we have. All we need to do is to get standards so that we can then interchange these the transmitters and the receivers.
Dead rail, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where we need to go.
We have a couple of team members that's what they do. They're working on dead rail, but I couldn't give you the specifics of what his team is doing right now at the moment, only because I don't know. So I know that they've been working on something for years as far as standards for dead rail layouts or dead rail engines and locomotives, but it hasn't moved real fast. So it's probably something I need to go and prod them a little harder. I've got 80 to 85 people on my team, and they're all dispersed between mechanical and electrical and DCC and conformance and inspection. And so some of them work hard and they don't slow down for a minute. And the other ones you got to go poke and prod and say, hey, where are you on with these things? One of the things that we're doing right now is we're completely rewriting not completely rewriting, but completely reviewing all of the standards for the standards conformance, all the standards, RPs, technical notes, etc. And as we come across different things, like we talked about traction the last time, as we come across different things, if we realize we don't have expertise in that area, then we go find somebody with expertise in that area and then give them a position on the team and have them start up. And one of the traction guys that Jim recommended, he's already been introduced to the team, or at least to my deputy manager, who's trying to get him all filled in and paperwork, etc. So that we get him started on traction. So I don't think there's a lot of dead rail guys on our team. So it might be one of those things. It's another niche thing that we need some expertise, somebody to oversee it and look at what we do have, and then fine tune it and help us develop those standards for that.
Steve, that might be right down your alley.
I'm not a member of the NMRA though.
Thank you for asking that though, Steve.
Well, it's we'd be glad to have you on the team, or glad to have you as an advisor to the team if that's what it takes.
There's been a lot of commercial businesses out there that are into dead rail. The battery, I would contact one of them. I know how to use it.
So here's the thing. So let's say I contact ESU because I'm interested in their 24-pin connector. They're the only ones that are writing, they have built any decoders for it. They're the only ones providing decoders for it at the moment. So I go to ESU and say, hey, I'm interested, help me develop a standard for it. What do you think ESU is going to do? So ESU is going to say, oh, well, here's what we've already written up. This is what we've got going. This should be your standard for everybody. And then I get Soundtracks that walks in and says, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I want to use these pins for these other things. I don't want that to be the standard. So that's why we have a separate team of engineers, electrical technicians, computer technicians, computer engineers, etc., that sit down and review these things and help create the standards based on the input from all of the manufacturers. So I can't just go to one manufacturer and say, hey, help me develop a standard for this.
Yep.
Well, I know when DCC came around, there was a lot of resistance with the CTC units that were already out there. And they eliminated some pretty good operations. And then they went into, but that took a few years to get that. Now, with everything DCC, it's hard to go in any other direction because all the investment money is in DCC. That's the way I see it. That they're really not interested in anything new.
I would not argue that point too much with you because everybody wants to have their DCC do the next higher, better thing. They want all the ditch lights and flashing ditch lights and moving fans, and they want the DCC to control all that. But admittedly, DCC it's finite. It's not, it can't do everything. So that's why you have things like LCC that are starting to make a resurgence for layout command and control, and the open LCB guys are stepping up and creating some new things. Was it TCS? I think it's TCS has built in some LCC items or some layout command and control into its throttles. So there is an interest by manufacturers to do something a little bit different, so long as they can see the vision for it. And they are, some of them are moving that direction where it's like, okay, well, it'll do DCC, but it also does, LCC. And you can do both and run engines and run your layout, etc., from the same command station.
Steve,
Andy, it's Clark Kooning.
Hey, Clark.
Knowing a lot of the guys who work on your team and in the LLC stuff, LLC stuff, these guys are not, a lot of them are not hobbyists. These guys are professional, way up in the electronic engineers. These are basement guys that are trying to figure out, how to modify things. These guys are super computer guys and young guys. And I think well, I know most of the guys on the team, maybe some of the newer guys I may not, but these guys are unbelievable. And even when they were developing LLC and even DCC to a certain point, it takes a little time. And now that people are used to the DCC and wanting more, I think you're going to see things move a lot faster than what you think. Not so much what you think, but what others may say, oh, it's going to take years. If there is a commercial component to this, manufacturers will jump in and move things along. We saw that in DCC, and
right.
Especially now with it being a proven commodity in model railroading, you're going to see other stuff come along.
Yeah, and you're correct, Clark. Along with that, next week, maybe 2 weeks, the 19th, I'm trying to set up a meeting with all the LCC folks. Now, of course, you got Gordy and he'll want to be part of it. He's over in Scotland, and then the LCC folks are out of Alex Shepard is out of New Zealand, and then you've got the rest of my team that's scattered across the U.S. and they're way smarter than me, but hyper intelligent engineers, electronic engineers, and they all want to get together on the 19th and in the next few weeks and talk about the future of LCC and what it can do. And some of the new stuff they're writing right now and what the NMRA to consider adopting is LCC programming that will do more than just the layout. So
yeah, I spent some time with a couple of the guys this winter, and I think the new stuff that's on the horizon, it's going to be unbelievable.
And a lot of times, if you guys go to one of our NMRA conventions, the LCC guys, they set up and they demonstrate everything that LCC can do. So some of it's kind of amazing. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about LCC because I have electrical engineers that do that for me. But it's expanding and growing, and it's the whole premise behind it is to take the load off of DCC so that you can run your layout the same way you would run your engines, right from your throttle.
Well, does anybody have any more questions for Andy?
I've got a question. With the LCC now, is that going to, my understanding is it controls the accessories that are around the model layout besides just the operating engines.
Right.
Okay. I tried a few years ago, since the Invisitrax is an animated system that's going to be around a track. I tried a few years ago to look at the LCC standards to find out what I needed to do to make sure those accessories are compatible, and I got nowhere. Now, is the new LCC, is there a specific group that's dedicated to the folks who are doing accessories versus just the engines?
Well, the LCC, I mean, they're mostly focused on the accessories, the stuff around the layout.
Right, lights and switches.
Yeah, lights and buildings and animations and that sort of thing. There are some among them that would try that are trying to evolve the standards so it could actually do the locomotives and along your layout too. So if you haven't gone there, I want to say it's not on our site. We adopted after we've had some discussions with them, and they've decided on a standard. Then we review that standard and come back and discuss it with them and then adopt it. But let me see if I can find this for you real quick.
Yeah, I mean, you can
Andy,
send
Andy,
that to me offline.
I'm just going to drop.
Andy, I hate to cut this short. If you could talk to Sherri offline, I really would appreciate it, because the show is running so long tonight. I've got to move it along.
Sure.
Yeah,
no
that's fine.
I'm just going to drop it in the chat.
Okay. Andy, thank you so much for doing this tonight, and look forward to seeing you again.
And I'll see if I can't get the authors of that white paper to come back and talk to this group. At least one of them, have him come back and talk to this group, and he can tell you about his vision.
And it'll take you off the hook. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andy. Appreciate it. Well, now I want to move along to our next guest, who is Martin Brechbiel, MMR. Martin, welcome.
Oh gosh, there I am. What do you know? Almost forgot I was here. Let's see if I can get my slides somewhere.
Don't you dare do that to me.
Okay, whatever that was. There we go. It actually worked. Okay, so we finished a project last week, which unfortunately means we have to start a new one. And of course, that means I run around like a madman in my shop trying to get something started in under a week's time. Fortunately, I'm usually working on 5 different things at once, so it's just a matter of running around in a circle till I get very, very dizzy and decide, oh, that project there, that's the one. So here's what we're going to work on. We're going to build one of these things. Quirky, strange, odd, but recognizable. It's been produced in various scales, and unfortunately, as far as I know, not in O scale, in 2-rail format. I think either MTH or Lionel made a very toy-like model of it, which I decided I didn't particularly care for. And even just taking the chainsaw to it and chopping it up, putting it back together wasn't going to be good enough. So I thought, well, we'll try to make something reasonably close. Not exact, but reasonably close. So we take you're not running around the shop, you grab a bunch of things, throw them on the table and say, well, that looks like that looks like enough parts to start with. We got doors, we got a roof section, one of the old Northeastern or whoever freight car roofs. We got AV brake system components, a couple of ladders. Fortunately, I happen to have a pair of caboose bay windows castings from Scale City Designs, the old keel line, but those save a lot of pain and suffering trying to replicate those. Some Traincraft windows, and then some Traincraft steps. It was the closest thing I had that made sense or looked acceptable or good enough. And there's a Traincraft smoke jack too. So that's where we're going to start. Whether we'll end with it all, I have no idea. Oh, some precision scale door runners supports. I don't know why I have them, but here's a good excuse to use them up and get rid of them. So, got a toolbar at the top, and I can't read my own screen. Well, okay, so we just test fit things here and see how things work out. First thing up, those got to just glue up a bunch of scrap pieces of scribe siding to make the sides. I don't know how long they're going to be because I don't really know how big that car is. I'm guessing it's around 40 feet or thereabouts, but it could be 36 or plus or minus whatever. And we just want to put things together and space things out and say, well, that looks about right. And if it looks about right, it's going to be close enough. So we have a step at one end, a pair of windows. These are actually glued together. Bay window, door. I think that came out of some Atlas cars. And the other step. And where this step goes is open to a little bit of debate. And of course, there's an end sill that goes on the outside of these steps. So there's another foot or so. So we're up to about 40 feet, give or take a little bit. I think that's within a reasonable doubt. And that resin flat carb recast that I had, I decided, no, not going to use that. I don't like it. A lot of pain and suffering to cut holes in it and cut the steps out and fiddle about with it. And I thought, well, we're just going to make something out of wood. Some more scribe siding, different width, some resin bolsters, piece of Northeastern scale lumber center sill. I think it's the last piece of that I had, and some strip wood on the outside. And that just kind of lays out the basic frame for what goes under this car. Okay, so so let's back up. One of the smart things to do at this point, when I don't think I was smart enough to do it at the time, nope, wasn't, is to drill the holes in the bolsters before you glue them down. If you have a long enough drill bit, that's not a problem, but it can be annoying to reach in there with the drill and rip up your car with the electric drill in your hand, and with one hand hold the car in the other. You thread through a piece of 32 thousandths phosphor bronze wire. The hole that's drilled in here is wide enough to let this piece of 3/64 tubing pass through. That's soldered to some 32 thousandths wire. Pass that whole thing through, drop a ACC and some glue on it, snap it together. We got a train line installed, some cross members, and then we start laying out. Well, this brake cylinder should go right about here, give or take a little bit. And we also cut out spaces on all four corners for where the steps are going to go. Okay, so we put in the brake system. That's easy enough to do. Lots of plumbing, lots of little pieces of wire, lots of holes drilled in white metal castings glued into place, some resin brake levers, clevises made out of Grant line parts, 25 thousandths phosphor bronze wire, and some brake hangers made out of some 15 by 60 thousandths brass. That's all glued in place and then tight. And that gets us our brake system. Pretty fair and easy. Well, okay. I will tell you, connecting these two to these two over here and making that piece of wire and getting it fitted together, there's a certain amount of colorful language that is required and perhaps some strong drink, and one's patience does get exhausted after a while trying to snap that wire into place, but it is doable, and I've done it enough times to learn probably not to do any more AV brake systems for a long time. Okay, so that said, we put the steps on, and they're just white metal castings, as I stated earlier, and they're just attached with a little bit of goo and some CA, slide them together on the glass working surface, and they're not coming back off. So now now we have a base to work on. And you flip it over, and first thing to do is add a little scribe siding between the steps, just 1/32 thick. That's for the end platforms that are going to actually be seen. So we'll worry about that. And you can see I've pieced all this stuff together. So waste not, want not on the scribe siding. I have all kinds of plastic envelopes and stuff filled with leftovers, and that's the first go-to place whenever I'm starting something is, what do I have in the leftovers box that I can put together and use for the next project. Okay, so we set the sides into place with all the components on them. The windows there's holes cut out, they're dropped into place. Everything's glued into place to their CA, goo, or the combination of the two. So they're mirror images through this axis, through this plane up here. And that puts those two sides fairly close together. This was a little more of an interesting challenge because that roof section. So we've got to get that measured properly. So if we know where the steps are, and we know where the end sill is going to be, we know the length of the roof section. Cut the roof the right length. Well, the next problem is this all has to go. This whole section at both ends has to go. Doing that cleanly by hand is a bit of a challenge. The easiest way to do that is with a table saw and flipping it over and nibbling it out with a blade. I don't have a table saw. I have a radial arm saw, and no, I did not do this with a radial arm saw. I actually turned it on edge, clamped it to a block, and fed it into my bandsaw and cut this back this far with the bandsaw on edge, and then just cut this off flat here and popped it off. A little bit of sanding, and it's pretty good. Came out better. Actually, came out better than I thought it would. I had a fear that I just made a nice piece of firewood, but it came out just fine. Okay, so we need ends and doors in the end. So we have some Grant line caboose doors. I had 2 of those in a pack. The windows were missing out of the pack. Perfect. I don't need the windows. We'll just use the doors. So some more scribe siding, some 16th-inch thick scribe siding. Set that aside. We'll use that later once we get the sides on the base and custom fit the ends in and then cut the doors in. And that's where we're going to stop for this week on this project. And I don't know what's going to happen next week between now and then because I'm on the road for a couple of days and I'm waiting for a set of decals for this car, which hopefully they may show up next week. We'll see. It's always an adventure. And if there's any questions, scream them out now.
Anybody have any questions for Martin?
It was all too easy.
Martin, thank you so very much. You have a great evening. It was too easy.
It was too easy.
You're getting too good, Martin. You're getting too easy. Well, now I want to introduce 3 people. Now I want to introduce 3 people that I really owe a great deal of thanks to. Jim Cleveland, who with his wife Anna, Jim and Anna run Frenchman River Models, and they were kind enough to donate the kits so that Tom Farrell and Tom Yorke can build the new model that they're coming out with in O scale, called the Spillane Building. And it's a beautiful kit. It's a beautiful model. And both Tom Farrell and Tom Yorke are going to be building it for us shortly. But I wanted Jim to come on so that we could say thank you so much for the kits for these 2 modelers so that they can build them for us, Jim. But most of all, thank you so much for producing the designs that Tom Yorke is continuing to make for us. I think you're doing the hobby a real service, and I wanted to personally thank you for all your help to Tom in continuing to get his kits out in the market. So thanks again for all the help for the show, but thanks again so much for helping Tom continue to have his kits produced.
Well, it's a pleasure to produce his kits. They are amazing.
What's the next one after the Spillane Building?
You'd have to ask Tom what he's gonna finish up next. I'm not real sure which one it's gonna be. There's actually a bunch of really good ones on the on the horizon.
I just want to say
that's great to hear. Well,
thank you, James, for offering that kit to me, and Tom Yorke. I consider a celebrity within our hobby, and I'll go into that in my presentation, but it's like working with one of the pioneers in the hobby, and I'm just honored. Thank you.
Yep. You are welcome.
Well, I think it's going to be a great kit to see built. And again, Jim, thank you so much for all your help for the show and for providing the kits to these 2 great modelers. And best of luck with in the future. And we'll look forward to more Tom Yorke's kits.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well, let me turn this over to Tom Yorke. Tom Farrell. And then we'll start this segment.
Well, I hold on a minute here. Everybody see that? I'm doing this live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. So this is a new kit designed by Tom Yorke, who I just consider a legend in our hobby. He doesn't produce kits; he produces artwork, in my opinion. And I have some of his older his original kits unbuilt on my shelf. I have a little collection of them, and I've only built a couple of them. This kit was just given to me recently, Monday, and I did make some progress on it, and I'll show you that this evening, provided I can. So this is called the Spillane Build. Sorry. This is called the Spillane Building. We're going to do a build along here. I estimate this taking perhaps 3 or 4 parts. I have built Frenchman River model boats before, and they are highly detailed. This kit is highly detailed and somewhat complex. As you'll see, the kit is very comprehensive. It has resin parts, 3D printed parts, wood parts, just all kinds of components. It's a regular kaleidoscope of components. I wanted to say a little bit about Thomas Yorke, because maybe everybody doesn't really know the man. He got a degree in commercial art, University of Florida. But he worked as a Disney Imagineer. We're talking about a fellow that was the art director for Disneyland Paris, Main Street. And he was also the art director for Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom in Asia. That's a pretty powerful resume onto itself in the art world or in the commercial art business. And as far as his modeling career, which he obviously did on the side while he was a Disney Imagineer, he started way back in 1974, and his first kits were Hydrocal. Those are the kits that I have, are the Hydrocal ones, the older ones. He's made over 100 different kits, and they're all signed and numbered. And many of his kits command just hundreds of dollars, the original kits. And we are all fortunate that Jim and Anna Cleveland from Frenchman River picked up Tom Yorke's line, and they make them out of resin casting, so they're readily available on a widespread basis. And I urge you to take a look at the Frenchman River website. Not only do they have nearly all of Tom Yorke's previous kits, but they also have a variety of other detail parts and, of course, the boats. So thank you again, Jim and Anna, for the donation and supporting NewTrax modeling. This new kit is brand new. It's never been produced. Like I said, it's very comprehensive. It has 60 resin pieces, 3D parts, decals, signs, all kinds of detail parts. And in Tom Yorke's own words, perhaps the most complicated design I've ever attempted in my career. That being said, we'll start part 1 of assembling this kit. The first thing, it came in a double box. There was a protective box out around this box. This box is quite large. This is a large kit. The box alone is 15 by 11 by 4. And when you open up the box, everything is neatly wrapped in foam. You can see the 3D printed parts up here. These are the decals. These are some of the resin components. There's a lot in this kit. One of the axioms from that I picked up off the web, off of the Frenchman River website, is quick assembly, great results. Well, that may be true with some of the simpler kits. This one is pretty comprehensive. It'll take some time to do this one justice. So in general, resin kits are relatively easy to put together. The art is in the finishing and the painting of them. So the first thing I did is I unwrapped all the resin components. And with all resin components, they're castings, and they typically have mold release on them. So with a Dawn dishwashing detergent and in a water bath and a toothbrush, I just thoroughly cleaned everything and then dried it, and then I photographed it here. I just wanted to see what we were dealing with. Then I did a mock-up of the sidewalks and the base. There's two bases, the main building and then this extension. I did this mock-up because as I pontificate on all my scratch builds, I build my models on a plywood base. And that's in the event that I ever do take down the layout. The buildings come right out and they're saved and not damaged. And in this case, it's particularly useful to have a base because otherwise these are the sidewalk, and I don't know how you'd build this without a base. It'd get a little tricky. So I cut a piece of plywood on my table saw, 7.25 inches wide, 12 inches long, and I used 1/2 inch thick plywood here. And I put a 1/2 inch perimeter around the plywood, and the model fits within this perimeter. And then I painted the perimeter black and the inside gray. There's no real reason to do that other than it photographs well when you do programs like this, to be honest. And then I began working the sidewalk. Now, because they are resin castings, the perimeter typically is a little high. So I just take a fingernail file and knock down that there's an edge around the perimeter. So I take that edge flat. So it glues better that way. So you're not resting on the rise that goes around the perimeter, the 180 degrees of each piece. Then using this Tamiya surface primer, I primed the sidewalk components. Now I like to use this surface primer because it's very light in so much as if you used an automotive primer, it's typically a filler primer or a thick paint. This is a very light paint. So there's a lot of detail cast in this resin sidewalk, all these cracks and imperfections and things. And you certainly wouldn't want to use a filler primer. You want to use a surface primer like this. So it's worth the nominal expense. They point out that in resin kits, you can use epoxy. I've always used super glue to glue them together. I use this extra thick principally, and there's this very thin. Sometimes I'll start with the thick. Once it's set in place, I'll put a thin over the whole model, and then I'll hit it with a zip kicker, which my friend Dan Rousseau likens to welding, electro welding. It just locks up the super glue instantly. Makes for fast modeling and gluing fingers to parts sometimes. So the first thing I did was glue that sidewalk to the base. I will point out that I haven't referenced, I don't use directions. So this is just how Tom Farrell does it. I'm working exclusively off the photographs. We'll see if I need the directions. Always my little game not to use them. Don't do as I say. All right. Don't do as I do or how I say. Use the directions. I'm not going to use them. I did notice that these pieces were cast slightly irregular. The back of it here was thinner than the front. Then I thought that would be a cool idea to reverse it because you'd want the water to theoretically run from one end of the building to the other. But then there's a location here that wouldn't make sense. So I had a problem here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I thought that was too much of a gap, a height difference between the two right there. So I put these little spacers in here so that when I lay this sidewalk down, it's now relatively flush. So I just super glued these to the plywood. And then this corner piece, I put just a piece of scrap wood there. And so I got all these relatively flush to one another. And here's the sidewalk and the first building base, the main building base, which is resin super glued to the plywood. I do want to point out the quality of the resin castings on this kit. They are absolutely flat. They are not warped. There is not any really flash on them. They are virtually perfect. And I checked them with my modeler square. They're perfectly square as well. So a lot of time went into the execution and production of these resin components. That isn't always the case with resin kits. Sometimes they're more like a craftsman kit, if you will, because they're not flat, and they're not parallel, they're not perpendicular. These are watch-like in quality. And then they have just very high detail all through that sidewalk is just amazing. Next up, I took the main components of the first building, and I used my surface primer. I'm a big fan of Monster Works laser cut brick. I finally found something that exceeds the quality of Monster Works brick. This brickwork on here, I've been modeling for 50 years. This is probably the nicest brick I've ever seen. And you'll see just how well it turns out. I use this American Accents rust. This is that enamel, and this is an acrylic. This is a two-stage process. I've used this in the past. Anybody that's seen any of my shows, for example, design preservation models, I use this material. I understand, I think from Bob Geldorf or a couple guys, you can't find this anymore, but since I still have it, I'm using it. So the first thing I did is after my primer dried, I sprayed the enamel onto the brick. I sprayed it in 4 different directions: north, south, east, and west, because I didn't want any primer to show. I let that dry overnight just to be safe. Then I went back with this acrylic medium, and you just paint it on, and I wiped it off with a paper towel. I won't be wiping the next building off with a paper towel because I got little pieces of paper everywhere. I'll use a cloth on the next section. Little note to myself. But basically, you just paint this on thick and then wipe it off, and you get a really effective looking brick. As you'll see later, I'll put mortar in there and weather it and do things. But these are my base colors. So we've got primer on there. We've got the rust color, and now we've got the acrylic weathering medium on there. I use dull coat in a lot of my, in between a lot of steps of my modeling, because if you don't use dull coat, sometimes the next layer of paint you put on there will dissolve the previous layer, and you get what we artists call a muddying of your colors. So the trick is to use dull coat, for example, and then that's a lacquer. So long as you don't use an oil-based paint over top of that lacquer, use a water-based paint, you won't get any cross mixing of basically these 3 layers now: the primer, the rust orange enamel, and then the acrylic wash. So it's sealed. Then I use this Roberts brick mortar, which is still available, and I basically just paint it on, and then I rub it off as well, off the top surface of the bricks. It works very well. You can use other materials. You could even use a acrylic wash. I kind of like this stuff, so I use it. Next up, I can't leave those bricks as they are. These are some of the colors I used on the first floor. So I'll show you. I go back with the bricks, and I added this alcohol wash. This isn't really from Micromark Gray Brown. This is something I mixed myself. Now I just use the bottle, but it's just a black India ink and a isopropyl alcohol in there. This is another Vallejo wash, a rust wash. Rust makes a great color for brick. Same with this Vallejo light rust, and this surface primer, it's just a red brown. As you'll see, I'll go back with a flat artist brush, and I'll add a little bit of randomness to that brickwork, so we don't have one single color across the whole brick. And these colors are used for the stonework and the windows and trim. And this is just a weathering medium. That's not exactly a great photo, but you can see where I used that alcohol wash in here. This does not have the paint on here. The first thing I did is add a little of the black alcohol wash on here. And I have began coloring the stonework. The stonework is with this, this is actually a concrete color. Next up, I put in the front stonework. This appears in the photo from Frenchman River Model Works. It looks as though they colored it a dark brown, which would indicate a sandstone. I wanted to make it a limestone because my layout is based in the half of my layout is based in the limestone belt of Indiana. And the fact that I, as most people know, was the CEO of the largest limestone company in the world, I thought it was appropriate that I made it limestone. So concrete is a perfectly good color for buff limestone, which is the premium limestone. And this surface could be considered what we call a rock face. So in the production of this stone, they cut with diamond saws, they cut these blocks out, and then with a hand chisel, they chisel the front on top, bottom, left, right, and middle with a just fat chisel. It's called a rock face. Then I went back and I used this driftwood to darken it a little bit. It's really more buff. The photograph is not really doing this justice. It's really more buff than gray. I'll take my word for that on that. And then next up, I thought I'd prepare these windows. I believe these are 3D printed. These pieces to the right are cast, resin cast. I think these are 3D printed. I believe these are 3D printed, and I believe this is 3D printed. So the only thing on here that's resin are these. I went all the way to Lowe's and bought a specific color here. I wanted this darker green, hunter green. It's a satin though, but I did learn a new technique. So I sprayed these with this satin spray paint. I do have an airbrush, but I just hate cleaning my airbrush, so I just use rattle cans. Once this dried overnight, I went back and hit it with dull coat, which not only flattened took the satin color away, but made it a flat. It simultaneously leveled the paint, so there was no orange peel. So it looks like it was airbrushed. I mean, one of the nice things about airbrushing is you could put very light coats on and you don't get an orange peel effect that you might get with a rattle can. I learned a technique here by hitting a semi-gloss or satin finish rattle can parts with dull coat, turns flat, goes, and you get a really nice surface. And here up started gluing up the sides, and you can see, it's tough to see in the photograph, but there's some variation in color here. There's the weathering from the alcohol wash. There's 2 or 3 brick colors here that I hit with a flat artist brush. I just tapped it just to get some variation across this. I didn't want it to look like every brick looked the same. And there's the nice, we always say in the limestone industry that limestone is the perfect complement to brick. It's a nice look. This buff, in fact, there's the nice buff color. Buff and the red brick look very nice together. You can see a little variation in here. There's variation in the mortar. There's the green color for the trim. There's the 2 pieces. There's the side. look at the detail they put on this brick. I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, the randomness and the the fact that it isn't laser cut, everything is not parallel and perpendicular, adds to the realism of this. That's why I say of all my years of modeling, that's pretty spectacular work right there. I'm certain it's hand carved. And this is my limestone work. There's the back wall. Again, you can see the slight everything is a question of subtleties, just slight variation in color, slight variation in weathering. You don't want everything to look uniform. Just like the bricks aren't uniform, the finishing is not uniform. It has to have variation, and you get this very realistic look. It's a very impressive model. And there's the back wall, or side wall, excuse me. I mean, that is a that is a very good looking kit. Very well done. And that's all we got for today. I am on my way to the Al Judy show tomorrow, and I'll get to work a little bit on this Monday and Tuesday again. So that's why I say it'll take probably four parts to go through this because I'm on the road. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much, Tom. So now
Great
let's
job,
turn to the designer of this kit, Tom Yorke. Tom, welcome. I really appreciate you coming here and showing us your build of this kit since you designed it.
You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there we are. Ooh, okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Jim and Anna Cleveland for continuing my line. As some of you know, I've had some medical conditions, and I can't really work in the shop casting resin and plaster much anymore. I can just do the pattern work. So this is a real boon. So thank you for your great work. Okay, my building. Do you have the photographs? Let's see. Okay.
Yep.
Some of the photographs are not going to be so great, but these are tower parts. And these are parts that I've modified. The part on the left is the spacer that goes between the windows. On one of the spacers, I removed the trim and I scored lumber in it. I cut a notch and put a little 2x4 there. And the window, I cut the bottom light out. That's just some of the little detail changes that I've done. Okay, if you got another photograph. Okay, this is the hard part. The base of the tower is one big clunk of a casting. And what I wanted to do was to make the interior hollow. So I took my jeweler's saw and I cut the inside chunk out, which took about 15 minutes, but it only took one blade. And I also cut the front, a little front section off because I wanted to recess that panel. And I was going to put ironwork on it to represent the stamped metal trim that was put on these buildings. So this is just the basis. Okay, next photo. what do we have here? Okay, this required just very little modification. I removed some of the bottom frill work a little bit, and I just cut a notch and bent that little piece of trim on the top edge. So when it's all assembled, that'll look fine. Okay, next one. Okay, that's the roof. Okay, what I wanted to do on this roof was I wanted it to look old. And so there's a lot of shingles that were missing. So what I had to do was I had to carve out these shingles with a knife and a file. And those will be covered with metal work later. Okay, next photo. Okay, this is where I am right now on the building. I wanted to get it finished, but I couldn't do it yet. The turret on here shows you where I removed the center section of the bottom piece, and I added lumber to it because this stamped metal is applied over a wooden framework, and it's just nailed to the framework. And so if you're going to remove the metal, you got to have the framework there. The upper part of the turret is where I removed a little bit of the material there. And the center section between the windows, I added 2 pieces of aluminum air conditioning tape. And I just applied it. I bent the tape in the corner, and the tape that's on the bottom part of the turret, I mean, that's also the aluminum air conditioning tape. It's self-stick. But what I did was I bent up the edges, and then I applied CA glue to the sticky part of the edge to seal that edge. And it also stiffens the very thin piece of aluminum. And if you give it several coats of CA, you're not going to damage it later when you're working on it. Now this building, the upper floor is not occupied. The bottom floor has been taken over by 2 industries. One of them is all electric appliance care. They took over the left side of the building. They didn't want the kitchen, but they did want the entryway. But they only wanted 1 door. So they plugged this other door with concrete block and they stuccoed it over. Now, when the bar came along, they wanted the kitchen, which is on the rear, but there was no way to get in. So they had to cut a hole and put a door in the front wall. This is how these old buildings get adulterated, which is unfortunate in some cases, but it adds to their character, I think. Let's try the next photo. Okay, this is the rear. This shows how I put a little chamfer on here, which I use spackling compound. And you can't really see it, but when tar paper goes onto the roof, it doesn't bend at a 90-degree angle up the wall. It bends at an angle, at a sloping angle. Otherwise, the tar paper would break. So you have to make that with spackling compound, and then I sand it just a little bit, and then when you put the roofing on, it disappears. Okay, next photo. Okay, we've had a fire up there, and it's not finished yet, but they've plugged these 2 windows There is a little, well, okay, I'll cover that later. On the brickwork. I had a little problem with my wall here. I had to correct with spackle, spackling compound. It's a wonderful tool. It corrects mistakes. Next. Okay, here's the other part of the wall. The lower part of the all electric appliance, that part of the trim was apparently rotten, so that was taken out, and they just put concrete block on the bottom of the wall and put a vent in it, and then stuccoed it. The stucco is spackling compound. I just apply that with a palette knife and let it dry, and then very lightly sand it, and then score into it a little bit. The upper part of the turret shows the wall where I remove the trim around that wood panel, and then I scored wood in there because the metal's gone. Okay, next photo. Okay, that's another shot. Yeah, that shows you can see how the metal kind of is peeled away, has fallen off that one section. This is a part that I love to do. It's a really great detail. The little platforms on the wall are going to be for air conditioning units. Okay, we have another photograph. Are there any more? Let's see. Oh, that's a detail. Okay, that shows you. I actually scribed some wood into the casting on the panel between, and then you can see the metal work, how it looks torn. And I'll cover painting that later. This is aluminum air conditioning tape, and it's just applied. It's just patched over the holes in the roof, and it'll be painted later. Okay. These are the two basic sections of the turret. One thing I should tell people here is when you do the turret, you really should read the instructions. They were written for a purpose.
What do you mean?
That's the most difficult part of the kit. I mean, the whole kit is based on that turret. So that's the part that really needs to, you really need to take care, and you really should read the instructions. Okay, the next photograph. Okay, these are, okay, this shows how I cut the wall section. I put a piece of plastic in the upper wall, and then coated it with spackling compound, and then treated it, and then stuck the little that's a little resin casting that I had on hand. I stuck in there, and then the other one had the door cut in, so I had to add all this stuff on here. And then the little the right wall is going to get a great big air conditioner, and the left one's going to get a little unit. Next, okay, this shows how the basic tower goes together. Now these the white castings are my own castings, and the gray parts are the kit parts. But this shows how I cut out cut out the center, and then I put wood on the lower part of the tower, and then painted that. Okay, next, this shows the back. I had to cut this because the back is solid, so I had to cut an opening. I was originally going to detail the interior upstairs to make it look like just a junk room, but since it was not going to be occupied, I realized that there's no need for electric lights because they wouldn't be there. So it's not detailed. So, okay. Yeah, this shows the little wall section that I put in that wall, the entry door. Got rid of one door. And those are two bad photos, but they'll show you the window and the spacer between the two windows of the tower. Okay. Now, this was the fun part. The Mesker Iron Works was in St. Louis, along with many, many other ironwork industries, and they made two kinds of parts. They made cast iron, which is what these columns are, and they're put over a wooden framework. So I decided on the one column to remove the lower piece since that broke, and this is the wooden framework that's remaining. Now the top part of the cornice, this is the wooden part that this cornice metal is fastened to. So it makes it look like a really solid system, but it's not. It's very flimsy. And what I did was I cut a little section of the cornice and made these little wafers. And I made 3 of those wafers. And I made this extra section out of styrene. Some of that will be covered and some of it will be left open. It was a nightmare to do, but it'll be effective when it's done. Next photo. It's me. I'd like to show a few tools that I do use. This is roofing material. Whoops. It is a restaurant napkin. It's extremely nice material. It makes great roofing because it's thick enough. And it has a smooth texture, but it's got a little bit of a texture to it. And I use white glue. I spray it and then I use white glue to apply it. That's one tool. The other tool I use is artist's gesso. That I use for my brickwork. That's the mortar. Let's see. Air conditioning tape. It's aluminum tape which has a sticky back, and you peel it off and apply it, and it will bend. You can apply it over the casting and sort of work it into the casting before you take the back off, and then very carefully take the back off, and you've got the shape that's already there, and you can apply this to the metal, and then you can bend it up, and that's a good tool there. Brushes. My 2 brushes, these come from my first job at Walt Disney, which is in 1972. I found them in the trash. Somebody didn't clean them. I took them out of the trash. I cleaned them, and they're 40-something years old, and I'm still using them. These are bristle brushes. This I use basically for scenery, and this one I use for my brickwork. It's a stiff. It used to be long like this, but it's old. I use these. These are cheap brushes. These come from Hobby Lobby, and you can get there's about 6 or 7 for about $8 in a pack. They will last a while, and then they become weathering brushes, but they're cheap. And the last brush I use is a good sable. The last time I bought this is a 1/2 inch. I use this to brush paint my 1/4 inch scale vehicles. I use acrylic paint. And instead of using a little brush like this, where you have to dip it and you have to paint a little bit and dip it again, paint a little more, this brush you dip and you can paint and you can continue painting and brush half the vehicle and get it nice and smooth. I used to use an airbrush, but like the other Tom, I hate cleaning it. So I've got a brand new airbrush, which I have never used because I don't like cleaning it. I think those are basically all the tools. The one other thing. This is a good tool. It's a Prismacolor marker. This is what I use to paint my bricks. Instead of using a tiny brush, wherever it is like this, to very carefully paint a little brick, this just paints a brick just beautifully. It doesn't overpaint, it just paints a brick perfectly. And I use about 6 or 7 colors, depending upon my mood, of reds, oranges, yellows,
Great tip.
to do the brickwork. But that's the basic start of the story, I guess. So if there are any questions, feel free, and I'll have a new background next time.
Well, folks, you have seen 2 brilliant modelers. I mean, really talented modelers building the same exact kit. Anybody have any questions for either one of the 2 Toms? Well, we'll look forward to seeing both of you next week, and we'll go from there and see how this is going to progress. So thank you all so very much. And I think that's going to have to be our show for this evening. So if we can run the caboose for our show, please.
A caboose.
This is really something.
And I'm going to leave.
That is some model. Good grief.
And it also says Canadian Pacific.
That's beautiful, isn't it? Well, that pretty well clears up our show for tonight, folks. So I really do appreciate everybody's attention and your coming this evening. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. That's what it's all about. So till next Wednesday, and we'll try to keep the show a little shorter for the future. I apologize as long as this one ran, but we just had so much great information that we wanted to try to cover tonight. So thank you for staying. Best of luck. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.